we just wanted to start with a different talk completely about human cloning this evening. Professor Shisana Baloyi has got multiple qualifications. He's got an MBCHB and also qualification in law, and also he's got a diploma in obstetrics and gynecology, being a qualified obstetrician and gynecologist. He also has a qualification in fertility. He's currently the chair and academic head of obstetrics and gynecology department at the University of the Free State. He has more than 34 years experience in healthcare industry. He's a qualified obstetrician and gynecologist and further trained in gynecological endoscopy, reproductive medicine, and IVF and gynecological oncology. His clinical interests include, amongst others, endometriosis, reproductive medicine, metabolic syndrome, and gynecological surgery. He cares passionately about value-based medicine and is an advocate for the better understanding and use of evidence across women's health. He has worked to further this agenda with the diverse national and international organizations, including the European Union, and as a research member for South Africa, Mozambique, India, and China, and also the National Committee for Confidential Inquiries into Maternal Deaths here in South Africa, and ESMO board member, a non-executive council member of the Society of South African Obstetricians and Gynecologists, and also SAGSWAG, and quite a number of other organizations at the national level. He's a lifetime member of the World Association of Laparoscopic Surgeons. He serves on the editorial board for the Journal of Obstetrics and Gynecological Forum and the reviewer of the South African Journal of Obstetrics and Gynecology, and also the SMJ, the South African Medical Journal. He has authored and co-authored more than 100 academic pieces of published articles, book chapters, training manuals, technical reports in peer-reviewed journals, national and international, and is regularly invited to present at national and international conferences and presented more than 30 research papers at national and international conferences. He supervised and co-supervised more than 50 postgraduates. ResearchGate records a research interest score of 81.8, more than 115 citations, and an H index of 5. He serves as a reviewer for the South African Journal of Obstetrics and Gynecology, SMJ editor-in-chief, obstetrics and editor for obstetrics and gynecology, and a Forum Journal, a former freedom fighter, people that we need today, political and social activist, and a community builder. He holds more than 10 university qualifications and several certificates from institutions of higher learning, obtained from 3 continents in 5 countries. And recently, Professor Baloyi has just been appointed as the director of the School of Medicine, that is the Dean of School of Medicine at the University of Limpopo. So he'll be he's serving notice currently. So he'll be moving over to the University of Limpopo to be the Dean of the School of Medicine at that university. It's a fairly new university. I think not more than 3 years, I think, that established the Faculty of Medicine there. And we are glad to see him joining that university. Sadly, the University of the Free State is losing such an accomplished and experienced academic. But they said they hope that he will forge links between University of Limpopo and the Free State University, so that they don't lose much from him moving over to that university. So, Prof, I don't know if you're ready to do that presentation now, to send me the presentation as you submit it via WhatsApp. Hello? Hi, Prof. Can you hear me?
Hello. There's episodes where I am losing your contacts. I don't know whether it is my poor reception from my side. There's a lot of times when I'm missing your what do you call, you hear me now? I've sent the presentation.
Via WhatsApp?
No, on the email also. It's on a Google Drive. That's what it says.
Okay.
I can
Probably in the meantime, whilst we are still waiting for the talk to go through, if you could start talking, then we'll catch up with you. Because your topic for this evening is human cloning, the quest for a global debate.
All right.
And let me see if I can, in the meantime, be able to human cloning. I think I got the. I'm trying to open it.
You have it there, yeah, by your side.
Yeah, I have the presentation. It's taking a while to open. It's a huge document. If you're able to read it on your side, Prof, you may continue. And we'll catch up with you once we. Oh, there it's coming. Can we learn to give me host status? I see that I do not have host status and will not be able to share the presentation. You may start off, whilst maybe just to introduce the topic, whilst it is still loading.
Thank you very much. Good evening, colleagues, and thanks very much, Bila and the clinics team, to have invited me to open this clinics webinar for this year, 2023. I'm really humbled about them. My first slide is a declaration of conflict of interest. I have nothing to declare, and I'm neither a product of human cloning. The objective of this talk is to explore the tension which is existing between and the elevation or alleviation of human suffering raised in the discussion of the therapeutic cloning of human cells. And at the same time, to answer that, is it ethical to attempt to clone a human for the purposes of medical technology? Now we'll have about 10 stations in our talk. The first will be the introduction, definition of what is cloning. And we'll look at the historical background and the process of cloning itself with the various types. Then we'll delve into the human cloning itself, cloning, and the arguments against cloning, and what we think the future of the human cloning is. I don't know. So, all right, must I wait for you? I see there's something. Dr. Bila?
I hope you can see.
Are you in control now?
You can see the screen. Yeah, I mean, control.
I can see the. Yeah,
it's moving very slowly.
Yes. Yeah, you can move. Next.
Yeah, the picture is not showing well on my side. It has not downloaded completely.
Yeah, it isn't
That's why it's not
completely. Yes.
Yeah, it does not download. Maybe continue. It does not download it completely. As soon as it is fully downloaded, I'll be able to.
The problem is now when you put your presentation, suddenly switched off my presentation now. Where it is?
Is it?
Yeah, the screen has been replaced now. My screen, okay. All right. Right, okay. Now I was still explaining the outline of the talk. And I said, and then the last will be the food for thought. And then the last point will be me taking my flight back home to Limpopo. Since the birth of Dolly, the clone ship in Scotland on the 5th of July, 1996, both the scientific world and the general public have become fascinated with the concept of cloning. You will want me, Dr. Bila, once you have been able to download and when you are changing the screens. This was a project which was spearheaded by Professor Ian Walnut. Are you fine, Dr. Bila? Or must I continue?
Yeah, continue whilst it's taking a while to complete the download.
Okay, great.
It's a huge document.
Right. Now, the DAO of human cloning, which is the utopian or dystopian type, the DAO is an entity designed to be fully autonomous and operated or operable without a central point of control. With this, the researcher Eric Jensen looked at the issue of human cloning as it is featured in the national science policy agendas in both of the United States and United Kingdom since the birth of Dolly. And such news, which were suggesting the imminent cloning of humans, have inspired fictional entertainment media over the years, including numerous popular films. Then he undergone with his colleagues some studies and divided them into two. One which examined the Allied British press coverage of this human cloning from the time of 1997 or the time of Dolly's birth up to around 2004. And in that they found, analyzed the papers to be around 857. The second study was focused on the 5 human cloning films which were released around 1978 to 2003. The findings was that the two sharply divergent discourses emerged from this study, or the study of the data on the two categories. One was that unqualified hope and habitual claims of future cures permeated the press discourse. And in contrast, the films constructed human cloning as an inherently very dangerous technology, often wielded by the hubristic scientists. And therefore, both the predominantly positive hype in the broadsheet press and the largely negative hype in the film indicated an impoverished and thin public debate on the issue of human cloning. Now, another group of scientists published a book on the aspect of human reproductive planning in 2002, in which they defined the human cloning to be a reproductive technology that will be carried out with the goal of creating a newborn genetically identical to another human being. And it is currently the subject of much debate, and we are also engaged in that, involving a variety of ethical, religious, societal, scientific, and legal issues. But from the scientific and the medical aspect of human reproductive cloning, it considers that the scientific and medical sides of this issue, plus the ethical issues that pertain to human subject research, with experience in reproductive cloning gained from animals, the report concludes that human reproductive cloning will be dangerous for human, features in newborn and it's likely to fade. The study panel did not address the issue of whether human, even if to be medically safe, or will not be acceptable to individuals or society. So that is the current standing, even with all the papers which are available. Cloning is a process of genetically creating an identical copy of the DNA or the cells or tissues or a complete living organism. It can be considered as a form of asexual reproduction. And Dolly the sheep was one of the examples.
Can you see this, Prof?
I just see you only. I just see your name.
You don't see the screen?
No, I don't see the screen. It's actual fact that this closed my screen. Close the screen which
then it means
is talking on.
I don't know how to
have you
solve this.
been able
Maybe I should
to
just go.
download?
Yeah, I've downloaded it.
Have you been able to download it? If you've downloaded it, then get somebody to help you to put it on.
Hi, Dr.
Can you send it to the
Dr. Bila, may I suggest that Prof continues to present and then we will share with everyone the presentation once Prof is done presenting. Thanks.
Okay. Because I thought this for the PowerPoint presentation that is downloaded now. I don't know why. Can you see my screen though?
Yes, we can see it.
Yes, can you see it now?
Yes.
Prof, can you see it?
No, I can't see anything yet. Oh, yes, now I can see it. Yeah, this slide number 1. Can you move to the next slide? Right. So I have nothing to declare. Next slide. Next slide, please. Right. You can stop there. The objective of this talk is to explore, right? Next slide. Okay. This is the birth of Dolly the sheep in UK on the 5th of July, 1996. Both the scientific world and the general are fascinated with the of cloning, which was conducted by Wilnut and at the Rosalind Institute in UK. Next. Now, the DIO of human cloning, the DIO is an entity designed to be fully autonomous, operable without a control point. Under Eric Jensen, a scholar, He looked at the issue of human cloning as it was featured in the national science policy agendas in both the United States and the United Kingdoms since the announcement of the leadership. And it looked at the news or the stories suggesting imminent cloning of humans have inspired the fictional entertainment media over the years, including the numerous popular films. And in that, they analyzed about 857 studies in the study, the second study where they looked only on 5 human cloning films, which were released between 1978 and 2003. Next slide, please. Now, the finding was that from the 2 analyses of those studies, there was 2 sharply divergent discourse which emerged from these studies. First was that of an unqualified hope and habitually hyped claims of future cures permeated the press discourse. And the second one, there was, in contrast, the films constructed human cloning as an inherently dangerous technology, often wielded by hubristic scientists. And both the predominantly positive hype in the broadsheet spread and the largely negative hype in the films indicate an impoverished and thin public debate on this issue of human cloning. So that was around in 2008, and it seems to remain the same. Next slide, please. Now, a group of scientists in 2002 published this scientific book where they look at the medical aspect of human reproductive cloning. The summary from there was first to define what human cloning is. According to them, is assisted reproductive technology that will be carried out with the goal of creating a newborn genetically identical to another human being. It is not different from the others, very close. One of the findings was that it is currently the subject of much debate around the world, as we are busy debating now, involving a variety of ethical, religious, societal, and as well as scientific and medical issues. And from the scientific and medical aspects of the human reproductive cloning, it considers the scientific and the medical side of this issue, plus the ethical issue that pertain to the human subject research. Based on the experience which was obtained from the human from the animal reproductive cloning, the report concludes that the human reproductive cloning will be dangerous for the woman, the fetus, the newborn, and it is likely to fail. The study panel did not address the issue of whether human reproductive cloning, even if it were found to be medically safe, will be or will not be acceptable to individuals or the society. So we need to keep in mind this, because that is the core of the discussion. Slide, please. Next slide. Cloning scientifically is the process of genetically creating an identical copy of either DNA, the cell, the tissue, or it could be a complete living organism. It is a form of an asexual reproduction. And Dolly the sheep was one of the examples of the mammals which was cloned from the somatic cell by somatic cell nuclear transfer technique, which will be demonstrated later on in the presentation. Next slide, please. Let's look at the historical background of this cloning. The first organism to be cloned was a fish by an Asian couple in 1963 by a Chinese embryologist, Dong Zhe. Yeah, that one. Then followed the clone via an embryo cell in 1986 in the Soviet Union. And then it was Dolly the sheep in 1996 and Roslin Institute in the UK. Around 1998, the American physician Richard Seed made a controversial statement about his intention to clone a human being. And in November 2001, the Regenerative Medicine published a paper by scientists working for the biotechnical company Advanced Cell Technology, in which they claim to have cloned a 6-cell human embryo. Next slide, please. Next one. Thank you. Now, it is not this only 10 baby hoax issue was. Even the human clone had a lot of hoax issues on it, where around June 2002, the Italian gynecologist Severino Antinori announced that the first cloned baby had already completed 14 weeks of gestation. And in December 2002, Bridget, the spokeswoman for the International Ryland Movement and the director of the Clonate, convened a press conference to announce the cloning of a girl called Eva. And in January 2004, another Dr. Panos Zavos announced before the press in London that he had implanted a recently cloned human embryo in a sterile woman. And in February 2004, another Wosok reported the same story. But all these later on tend to be hoax stories. Next. So in summary, there has not been any human cloned. Now let's look at the natural cloning. In human, this where the monozygotic twins in sexual reproduction is one of the natural cloning. And vegetative plant or propagation is where the process of making a genetically identical plant through non-sexual means. And some animals, like the snakes, sharks, and commandos, dragons, they can reproduce genetically identical copies of themselves without any aid from the males. Next slide, please. Again, from the cellular point, the natural cloning or asexual reproduction can be found as an example in the cell division and in amebas, in this type of cloning that occurs naturally in the bacteria of single cells, where we have the multiply by binary fission. Next. Three types of this artificial cloning. One involving gene cloning, in which case you create copies of genes or segments of DNA. This is more mainly used in pharmaceutical companies, where, for example, in the manufacturing of the insulin. It's reproductive cloning, which creates copies of whole animals. And from reproductive cloning, you can have therapeutic cloning, where the development of the embryos specifically aimed at getting or harvesting stem cells for experiment, and also to be used for tissue replacement on injured cells, like spinal cords and organ replacement. And in that therapeutic cloning, you have the replacement cloning. The reproductive cloning, as I've said before, they share many of the same techniques, but they are done for different purposes. Next slide, please. In the DNA cloning, I have explained already, especially in pharmaceutical manufacturing of certain drugs, like, for example, insulin. This is a technology which has been around since 1970, where the scientists are able to cut the DNA and multiply it with an interest of and inserting it into the plasmid to next slide. Now, let's look at the reproductive process in human so that understand why human cloning, we have to use the somatic cells. Human reproductive cloning, reproductive system itself, is that we, both from the male and female, they donate the half or 23 chromosomes so that they can compensate, get the full complement of 46 chromosomes. So each from the male and female contribute the gametes, and then there's fertilization. After that, you have the zygote, and then the embryo, which develops later on into a human being with complete 46 chromosomes. Now, in cloning the entire 46 chromosome cell, which we're going to demonstrate. Next slide. So we will use the cloning of the leadership to demonstrate the reproductive cloning. Next slide, please. So in reproductive cloning, especially how Dolly was born or created, was that a donor cell was taken from the sheep's udder, and in this donor cell, the nucleus was denuded or taken out. And from the other sheep, or the female one, they got the oocyte or the egg, which was taken in there, and they remove the nucleus of the egg. And the two are made to join by an electric force, or so that they become one. They fuse like in IVF, and the fused cells began cultured, becoming an embryo, and once ready, it's transferred into the surrogate mother's or the other animal uterus, which develops later on until the time when a newborn sheep is delivered. So you will have three animals involved. First, the ones who will donate the somatic cells, which will comprise, which will have the complete 46 chromosome. The other one, which will donate eggs or oocytes, which the nucleus of that oocyte will be removed, and the complete chromosome will come from one somatic cell and combine with that. So the process is where the somatic cell nuclear transfer is conducted, and this ensures that the genetic materials come from one somatic cell transferred to the egg that has had its nucleus removed, and then later on stimulated or cultured to develop the embryo. And later on, we have intrauterine transfer, or the embryo develops until a fully grown organism or animal is there. Next slide. Next slide, please. Yes, thanks. Now, let's look at therapeutic. No. You have jumped. Can you go back, please? Thank you. Let's look at the therapeutic cloning. So the process is the same as we did with Dolly, the reproductive planning, where the nucleus from the somatic cell is fused with an empty egg cell, and you have the clone cells, which later on they develop into an embryo. And the difference in the therapeutic training is that you do not, the embryo does not develop into an organism, but the embryo is cultured where the stem cells will be harvested from them. So the therapeutic cloning is the production of clone cells for the sole purpose of harvesting these stem cells. And it's performed, but the resulting zygote is not allowed to grow past the bastula cells to get into formation of the organism. In this manner, a patient's skin cell could be later be induced to grow new tissues to replace damaged organs like the nervous, spine, and muscles and heart. Next slide, please. Let's look at the application of cloning currently. It's used, the first example I've already indicated in pharmaceutical, proteins, vaccine synthesis, and antibiotics. The next is these can be used in DNA to create copies, the cells, the organs, or even the complete animal using that. Another application of the cloning is in agriculture, where they use it to create pest-resistant plants or very unfavorable weather resistance or environment. Cloning is also utilized to create transgenic animals and for the gene therapy. In livestock, it can be used to duplicate the desirable combination of the features of the animal in stud production, where also in certain types of animals which have with certain characteristic, good milk production or meat. It can be used also as it enables faster reproduction of an animal with a particular genetic change that does not normally make such a capacity to generate a medicine or in milk. Additionally, it is simple to alter a gene in cultured cell than it is an entire animal, and the changed cell nucleus may be added to an enucleated egg to create a clone of the desired genotype. So cloning is used in scientific study to better understand the basic biological processes of animals used in tests such as mice. I can say that the only time which cloning was with these pit bull stories. Next slide. So after Dolly was born, it became a scientific association where a birth was announced around that time. The next of it was when her relatively early death in February in 2003 fueled the debate about cloning. Next slide. Now, the issue about the death of Dolly also, it had so many ramifications because other people said it may not have been related to the cloning itself. And continuing to study that, what was the problem of it. But after that, countries found themselves signing a proclamation that closes the door for cloning for human reproduction because of that failed project of Dolly. Now, the controversy is that the policy still allows for human embryonic stem cells research. And one argument is that human cloning at any degree is still human reproduction, because the cells or whatever which will be used, it is derived from the human, whether it is the somatic cell or it is the oocyte. So that's where the problem lies, is that the human cloning is allowed up to a certain countries. Next. Now let's look at the worldwide cloning research legislation per country, especially the superpowers. So when in Germany, human cloning is illegal, therapeutic cloning also is illegal. The use or the creation of an embryo from cloning, it is also illegal in Germany. In the UK, human cloning is illegal, but therapeutic cloning is allowed. And the creation or the use of an embryo is also allowed with certain reasons. In Japan, human cloning is illegal, therapeutic cloning is allowed, and the creation and the use of embryo is also. In Canada, human cloning is illegal, therapeutic cloning is legal, and the creation or the use of embryo in Canada only allowed to answer or to respond to the issue of sterility. In the USA, human cloning is illegal, therapeutic cloning is legal. The use of or the creation of embryo, only private companies. As you know, in the states, the various states that create their own legislation. And in China, human cloning is illegal, therapeutic cloning is legal. The creation or the use of embryo can only be allowed for therapeutic purposes. Next slide, please. Now, back home, this was the only article which was penned down by Professor Ames Dyer and the colleagues, looking at the ethical and the legal controversies in cloning for biomedical research. And in the article, the important summary from the article was that the promised benefits are new and important knowledge of human embryological development, the gene action, and the production of transplantable tissue and organs that could be effective in reversing or curing currently irreversible disease processes. It indicated the benefits from the human cloning. However, this research involves the deliberate production, the use, and the ultimate cloned embryos, hence reawakening the debate on the moral status of the embryo. And when we look at the legislation of in our country, the South African Parliament promulgated the legislation permitting therapeutic cloning only, and thereby demonstrating a commitment by the state to act in the best interest of patients and of regenerative medicine. That's in the Act number 61 of 2003. Next slide, please. So what are the ethical aspects and laws of reproductive cloning in humans? Where is the problem? Now that Atlantis prize, which was conducted by Uono and colleagues in 2019, was that the cloning debate has also been reinforced with ethical, religious, scientific, moral, and medical issues, where some suggest that cloned human beings will suffer from the lack of a unique genetic identity. And these critics worry that cloned humans will be constantly compared to their genetic progenitors and suffer from unrealistic expectations created by these comparisons. So that's the ethical part of the ethicist, defending or making a point not to allow human cloning. Next. So what are the arguments against this? The predominant theme underlying arguments against the human cloning is that the cloned child will undergo some sort of physical, social, mental, or emotional harm. Because of this and other concerns, the United Nations and many countries have banned human cloning. But what is the major issue with cloning humans? The opponents of cloning have concerned that the technology is not yet developed enough to be safe, and that it could be prone to abuse, either in the form of clones raised as slaves or leading to the generation of humans from whom organs and tissues will be harvested. Next slide. Now let's look at how does cloning violate the human rights? On cloning interferes with the right to reproductive privacy and autonomy. Because if you look at the human rights, it is also my rights if human cloning is going to answer my problem of sterility or infertility. But currently, because of that law, it interferes with individuals' rights. The Universal Declaration on Human Rights guarantees the right to found a family and protect the family as a sphere of privacy. Now, is human cloning a violation of human dignity? Cloning can only violate the human dignity of the persons involved if there are independent reasons for its immorality. Now, the clone cells themselves, because remember, the clone cells are not yet an organism. There's no limbs, there's no eyes, there's nothing there. It's just cells. They are from those embryos. Do they have rights? The scientists will continue to clone embryos as it is happening in many reproductive labs. They will be doing this in their quest to develop stem cell therapies. Ultimately, their work will facilitate the birth of human clones in years to come. And once they're born, the human clones will be entitled to all of the rights and freedom enumerated in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the international laws. So why not human cloning? What are the issues? Next slide. The issues is that the scientist says it carries a high risk of abnormality in the resulting child. It puts both the cell donor and the birth mother at risk. It has high failure rates, as in the case of when Dolly was ultimately born. There was 1 out of 276 attempts. That is when they achieved the creation of Dolly, or the cloning of Dolly, the sheep. The other problems they talk about is the telomere length, which results in short lifespan, was one of the theories ascribed to the early death of Dolly. Often they have very large organs during their birth. This is one of the reasons which was ascribed to the early demise of Dolly also, that they have got large offspring syndrome with life, and that creates a burden and an early departure or death of the organism. Let's look at the medical issues. Is that the health risk from mutated genes like lung problems, heart defects, neurological disorders, unstable immune system, possible miscarriages or stillbirth, deformed embryos and clones. Next slide. Issues is that the difficulties of enforcing laws, the issue of criminal identity, as this new, the cloned human being will be looking identical to the other one. The property honor and clones, and the kinship of the offspring. Next slide. Now, and the issue about identity and uniqueness is that the clone loses its own identity, doesn't have its identity and uniqueness because it's an identical picture or organism to the other organism. So it can't have its own identity. So it loses the genetical identity because it has got genetical identity of another person. Feeling of less uniqueness, accurate human identity diagnosis will fail. For example, the DNA profile of fingerprints. And it has a psychological bearing, growing up knowing yourself to be a genetic copy of someone else. Next slide. And some scientists say cloning could lead to extinction. If everyone has the same type of genes, there is a risk of getting infected by the same type of pathogen, lack of diversity among the human population, the way the natural process of evolution will be halted. And if clones were manufactured to be perfect, will all imperfect real humans become the minority? And that can lead to an overpopulated planet or less resources or more death. So summarizing that the sowing destruction could be the results of this cloning. Next slide. Now, the ethical implications of human cloning is that the embryo is used for cloning and research purposes, but the ethics and moral values oppose it as it is destroyed or it destroys the human embryos. So some persons regard the human embryo as an individual, especially some religious fanatics. They regard it as an individualized entity or a person that deserves all rights as a human being and should have it or as it is initial stage of human development. Next slide. The ethical implications of human cloning in therapeutic cloning creates embryo for stem. After the stem cells are taken, the embryo is destroyed. Some of the moralists or ethicists, they say it's morally wrong. Next. The ethical implications of human cloning is that much of the debate about cloning and genetic engineering is conducted in the familiar language of autonomy, consent, and individual rights. But the defenders of liberal eugenics argue that parents should be free to enhance the genetic traits of their children for the sake of improving their life prospects, as Buchlan et al. Had demonstrated in 2000. Next slide. The case for banning human reproductive cloning is because most scholars or authorities agree that it is likely to lead to serious abnormalities and birth defects. But suppose that one day producing a baby through cloning were no more risky than natural reproduction. Many believe that it will still be ethically objectionable. Next slide. We have already discussed the moral status of the embryo, that there are three possible ways of conceiving the moral status of the embryo: as a thing, some conceiving it as a person, especially from the religious point, or as something in between. Now, to regard an embryo as a mere thing, one open to any use we may desire or devise, it seems to others to miss its significance as a necessary life. Respect the old growth forest does not mean that no tree may be held or harvested for human purposes. And respecting the forest may be consistent with using it. The conviction that the embryo is a person derives support not only from certain religious doctrines, but also from the Kantian assumption that the moral universe is divided in binary terms, which means everything is either a person worthy of respect or a thing which is open to use. But this dualism is really overdrawn. Next slide. Now, why would someone want to reproduce through cloning? A human being or any person, why would to use cloning, human cloning? One would want to use that to create a genetic replica of an organism or himself. Cloning is ubiquitous in nature. To have a genetically related child, to enable parents to have a child with a genome identical to that of a person with good health or other desirable characteristics. Cloning will provide an efficient way to create a survivor sibling who could act as a tissue donor for a sick sibling. Cloning could significantly expand our procreative options in those who have a serious challenge with fertility, who could have had advanced malignancies which could have destroyed even their gametes and all. Next slide. Backward. You jumped one. Arguments which are in favor of cloning. Cloning could significantly expand our procreative options. The two clearest motivations for using cloning will be as a cure for infertility, as I've said, and to create surviving siblings. As we already allow people to access reproductive technologies for these purposes, these appear to be justified reasons for allowing people to access cloning techniques. An argument is old for why producing children through cloning is more unethical than using other reproductive technologies or the standard sexual reproduction. Next slide. Now, the ethics which is against reproductive cloning, it says it's wrong because it departs sexual procreation. It is morally troubling that the primary purpose is to create children of a certain kind. And it says it is similar to other forms of genetic engineering by which parents seek to choose the traits of their children, for example, like sex, eye color, perhaps one day even their intellectual attributes or athletics, prowess, and musical ability. The desire to control the genetic characteristics of one's offspring points to the heart of the ethical issues. The moral problems with reproductive cloning lies in its assault on the understanding of children as gifts rather than the possessions or projects of our will or vehicles for our happiness. So it's a problem of that it's regarded as a thing. Next. Now, Vladislav looked at, this was a paper in 2000, it was published recently on October 2022, where the human cloning, the notion, the types, regulation and disputable questions about it. It follows the birth or the creation of DOLE since 1996. And in which case, after the death in 2004 and 2003, in 2005, the United Nations adopted this Declaration on Human Cloning to try to deal with this issue, receiving only ambivalent support from the UN member states. As I've already indicated, the UN had completely banned reproductive cloning, whether it was for therapeutic and all this. Now, human reproductive cloning is a challenging subject, but establishing a robust global governance framework in this area may be possible via an alternative deliberative format that involves a wide range of stakeholders and is based on knowledge sharing and feasibility testing rather than the interest-based bargaining that is common to intergovernmental organizations. Although the last scientific work related to cloning has been focused on potential medical application, the purpose of that article, which they published, this one, was to collect and analyze the available information from the legal and scientific literature. And the conclusion is not different from what was there because the last was in around 2004 and 5 from the United Nations Declaration. Next slide. And leaves people who are supposed to benefit from this human learning not knowing what to do. Actual fact, denying their human rights. So in summary, the imprecise use of the term cloning confuses the public at the cost of good science, as it was indicated in the DIO publication. Therapeutic and reproductive cloning are clearly different. Reproductive cloning places an altered human cell in a woman's uterus. In contrast, non-reproductive cloning takes place in a laboratory and cannot lead to a human being. Now, these differences mean there is a little danger of a slippery slope leading from cloning that is to cloning that is universally condemned, as it is currently. Cloning covers an array of scientific possibilities. Among these are stem cell research and other forms of non-reproductive cloning. Therapeutic cloning holds great promise to alleviate human suffering and advance human knowledge. Next slide. As well as to answer to those who have fertility issues. Next slide. The technology of cloning is too tempting to live unregulated, correct? Because of its extraordinary potential, unscrupulous people will attempt cloning. By legislating procedures and safeguards, society can regulate what kind of cloning is permitted. It can limit and define what kind of cloning is illegal. Reproductive cloning can be identified, isolated, criminalized, and when necessary, punished without limiting the scientific knowledge or medical advances that might be gained through therapeutic cloning. Scientists have the necessary technical training and background to make informed decisions about cloning. When you look at our advanced medical technology now, the democratic societies must learn about, discuss, and debate the moral and ethical issues surrounding the therapeutic cloning. The expertise of scientists is critical to helping democracies make informed decisions about the policy. Next slide. The embryos which are used in research, they are not babies. They have no limbs or brains. They are just tiny balls of stem cells. Moreover, the embryos currently used are from fertility clinics where they are routinely discarded. Using them for research assures that they are not wasted. Using them values their potential to expand the human knowledge. Next slide. Now, looking at yesterday, today, and for tomorrow, was this rapid condemnation of human cloning ethically justified? In some cases, it is unclear that there is anything morally wrong with cloning. Would cloning a human being always be impermissible, or are there cases in which it will be acceptable? Next slide. A lot has been said, and I think I've left you in the cold or in the thick forest where there's tigers, and it indicates, and the solution is that a lot of dialogue is needed in this, and it needs to be reopened. Next slide. No. The food for thought, whether or not cloning is, or all things considered, permissible, depends on weight of the reason for doing it and the weight of the reasons against doing it. There are cases in which individuals may be justified in using cloning technologies as a means for reproduction, especially when this is the only way to create a child who is genetically related to the donor, or to produce a child to act as a surviving sibling. Furthermore, the arguments adduced against cloning do not provide strong reasons to believe these specific uses of cloning technologies will be unethical. Cloning may be well permissible in this. Next slide. With the changing medical landscape and the current advances, is it not to review the global stance and attitude towards human cloning? And as Bob Dylan in 1963 said, the times, they are a changing ones. Should human cloning continue to be forbidden, or can the world revisit the condition of conducting human cloning? Next slide. And therefore, that should be the quest for the debates for human cloning. Next slide. No, last one. Now we invite the stakeholders to open the debate on the cloning. Should be the patient, including the clone that the clone will be implanted to, the scientist or the doctor who are conducting the procedures and giving the proof that it could be safe, the general public, the many people who could be impacted from having a clone in their lives, and the legislatures, the government, to demonstrate the ability of stopping it appropriately if it is dangerous, or allowing it. The outcome could affect how the people perceive the government's good judgment. The products or the human who could result from cloning will still be regarded as a high risk pregnancy, which is supposed to be subjected to high surveillance and high antenatal care, where all the abnormalities detected, whether it's congenital anomaly, will be acted or appropriate action will be taken, which will be the same as any other high-risk pregnancies in today's technology, which are subjected to high surveillance, where when you pick up any abnormality which is incompatible with life, you cancel the mother for determination. And the woman, even unnatural reproduction or IVF could have subsequent pregnancies which have congenital or anomalies problems where the pregnancy has to fail either by therapeutic or medical termination. I think with the technology which we have currently and the advancement in medical field, human cloning should be allowed based on those instances indicated. That is the last slide from my and the take-home message. Next slide. That's a bibliography. Next slide. Next slide. I'm going. Thank you all for listening and being here for me. And thanks for the opportunity again.
Sure. Thank you very much, Prof, for this very interesting topic, quite an unusual discussion. Something that maybe we've never had in a long time, a discussion about the future of the human being, or how human beings can be created. And you touched on a few other things. My one question or two that I would want to ask initially is, you mentioned it in passing, the issue of eugenics. And also, when we look back at Hitler and the 80s, where Hitler wanted to create a master race, and he was told for me that, or there's been a global reaction, and I think the scientific world, the lobbyists in ethics are also saying it was something that should not have been permitted. And I think politically, all agree that it was something that is wrong. But I hear you say that on your side, you seem to be in favor of cloning. Wouldn't that lead us to something of that nature, where those who have the means of this scientific development would want to trade something far superior for themselves in society? And the second thing is, what about the religious bodies? I see you mentioned quite a number of stakeholders, but the religious bodies across the spectrum in religion, or Christian, Hindu, Muslim, and other faiths, would they be in favor of human cloning? And what would they say about the role of God in all this?
Thank you. The
levels confused. The climax are a bit confusing. So.
Yes, that's why I say we need to open that's why the question is, this cloning needs to be reopened. We should debate about it because there are instances where it is relevant to apply it. The ethicists base their arguments against cloning because of that eugenic issue that from the German story they were. But I have already indicated in the presentation the scenarios or aspects where human cloning will be applicable. The issue which we need to look at is the protocols and say, when will this be? Because there are so many controversial issues in medicine. I mean, for instance, termination of pregnancies, if there are certain religious groups who are completely, totally against it. But, and there are other people who advocate for, when you look at the human rights, now, I mean, even if it's a religion, really, how many people are religious in the world? It's about 10%. You put it as breaking it down to from Hare Krishna, it's not the majority of the people. So on the basis of ethics and the human rights, we cannot continue to be subjecting and denying other people's rights on the basis of the few religious well, the religious person will have a right to choose not to participate in it, but the non-religious people should also be given the opportunity to have their rights. So that's it. So what we need is a guideline, unlike now that everything has been sealed and there's no discussion about this. When it stands to benefit people, there are people, individuals who can benefit from this human land. So we're on the point of looking at the human rights, individual human rights, that can be, it needs to be applied, yes, thanks. I hope I've been able to touch into that.
Yeah, sure, no, thanks, yeah. But I don't see questions, but if you've got a question, you can just raise your hand and let's talk. I know you've lost a lot of time because of logistics at the beginning and the issue of load. Yeah, the issues of load shedding. I don't know, who's in which cycle of load shedding now, and us about to get load shedding in the next 30 minutes or so. We want to play our dinner quick and get to bed, or switch on candles, the generators, whatever you want to. The other question that I want to ask, it's about to know you. I don't know what you in terms of gender now, because with cloning you can treat either male or female when there's human cloning. That is within scientific.
No, well,
but now yeah, okay, go ahead. I'll ask a question after this.
No, well, it depends who wants to be cloned, because remember the 46 chromosome, in cloning, we're getting the 46 chromosome from one organism. So the somatic cells, if it's a man who wants to be a clone, will be the one who will donate the chromosomes, which will be fused with the oocytes. But the woman will always be involved because of two things: donating the oocytes, which will be denuded of the nucleus, and being the surrogate, where the embryo will be transferred into the uterus. Currently, there's no other place where you can develop a human being out of the uterus. So there will always be a woman involved. The women are gods. They are the superior. So if it's a woman who will be donating the somatic, the nuclear, the complete 46 chromosome, the other woman will be the one who will be donating the oocytes, and then the chromosome, the nucleus will be removed. And so it depends. If we want to clone you, Dr. Bila will get the complete set of chromosome from your cells. But the woman
wonder if I'm waiting to be cloned.
Yeah.
Yeah. We should clone people like you who submit multiple qualifications. Super race of intelligence. What about LGBTQI plus? Would they be able to clone that community? LGBTQI plus?
Yeah, well, although they're not utilizing cloning currently, because they don't have problems with, they donate their gametes where they get it. There are so many ways in which they get their gametes, with male or female gametes and fertilization. They utilize the reproductive endocrine laboratories, yes. Well, that's another discussion, and it depends on the legislations of the countries, whether this, like in South Africa, we allow and accommodate everything. So that will be their right to. But there are more serious about individuals who will have lost their reproductive capacity. Maybe let's say they had malignancies, and involving the reproductive system, or they have had infections, viral infection, which wipe out the gametes, or they have been exposed to radiations and all this. The cloning can be used for them, yes. Can be an answer to them.
There's a
But
question.
for those who want to have their own genetic, because that's a difference, yes.
Yeah, thank you for that. There's a question from Sheena Gines. If the new donor in reproductive cloning came from a person who has a disease like cystic fibrosis or diabetes, does this mean the clone will inherit the same fate? Will basically the clone in a new environment change these factors?
That is a disadvantage of cloning, in that you may now multiply problems because the complete 46 chromosome may come in with underlying possible genetic diseases. All right. So there is process in terms of screening all these things when we're talking about the advancement. So that's what before you can embark on that, you can counsel the patients on that, because we have the means to test all these things. So you don't just pick up a person there and then you enroll for training. There's gonna be workup. It's the same as even in reproductive and IVF. We screen for all those things, that there's a possibility that you have a certain gene trait of certain conditions which can be passed on. So that's is
there no? Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Is there no possibility of using genetic modeling or sort of to denude the cells of any impairments, like maybe remove what is not desirable from the genetic makeup, so as to create a perfect human being, so to speak? Is that possibility? Is that a possibility?
Well, that's also a problem of cloning, because people start choosing and say, no, this one is not there's not possible. That's where eugenic story is, and then it creates a problem there where people say, no, now the child is no longer, it's not a boy, it's this now, and their eyes are not that and that. There's a possibility of that. That's what it is on the abuse side, when they say it is prone to abuse, specifically for that. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But the big issue is that it's not being discussed. You say nobody's talking about it. Yes.
Yeah, there are many more other. We had problems, but this one is not a big problem. Challenges in the last 2 years or so. Yeah. But in the interest of time, we will have to say just thank you very much for availing yourself and giving us this interesting talk. And we've got the slides. You don't mind us sharing?
No, I don't mind. Yes.
You don't mind. Okay, we'll share with
no,
the
I don't
colleagues,
mind.
But they can also watch on YouTube. Yeah, they can watch on. We can watch on YouTube. Those who want them can ask for the slides. We want just a general session, and those who request can send us a message, say the slides or so. I want to thank you once more for availing yourself to clinics of the very first work for the year. It's quite an interesting topic that we had, and we look forward to hearing from you in the future. You will be joining us up north now, University of Limpopo, from where you'll be based now. We wish you all the best in your new venture as the head of School of Medicine at that university, and the best for the university. And great loss to the university, the first thing I think we all gain as a country. And thanks, colleagues, for joining us this evening. We just want to appreciate your presence once more. We hope to see you again next when we continue with our weekly webinars. We should be giving the next speakers details or topic in the next few days. And thanks to Gamo also for working together with us, working together as a team from Gamo and also Togo, who's not with us, but part one of the team members who organizes webinars. And we hope to see you again next week. And have a good evening. Thank you very much. Good night.
Bye.
Thanks.